This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. Go to braintreepayments.com/whatthetech for more information.
What the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew here, and I'm joined by Paul Thurrott, as I'm each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
You are not at home today.
It's true.
You are.
I'm in like Hitler's bunker today.
Yeah, you're in hiding. These are the final days of the war,
Right.
and you're just somewhere, just deep away from everything else.
The 12th Army is going to save us.
Yeah, they never showed up.
they
were defeated way before.
I don't believe they ever existed.
Yeah. How you doing, Paul? Good.
Pretty good.
Things are settling down for you a little bit, or is it getting wild again now that build is around the corner?
The next month or so is going to be really tough, actually. This week I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm not doing this today, obviously, but we're taking my son around to look at colleges. It's school vacation week. So my wife and both kids are out in Delaware. Next week is Build. And the week after that is Ignite, which is the Microsoft show that replaces TechEd in Chicago.
Chicago, yeah. So you're going to be traveling a lot.
Yeah, but then the day I get home from that, I'm actually flying out to Las Vegas. And I'm going to drive a car back from Vegas, finally, that I bought back in January.
Oh, you're doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So a lot's happening.
Yeah, I'm really pumped about it.
Yeah.
So,
are you doing it alone?
My dad's going to drive with me about halfway. That's
Okay.
to St. Louis, and then I'll be on my own
Okay.
after that.
I mean, that's at least not bad. That's better than going all the way by yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. We have a lot to talk about today, obviously. I want to talk about Build. I want to talk about the Apple Watch a little bit. I want to pat myself on the back and say that I was right about the whole $10,000 Apple Watch. I'm going to do that for about 20 minutes, guys. So
Okay.
I'm going to talk about
Sit back.
Microsoft and Android, and there's so much happening. But before we do that, we want to talk about our sponsor, and that's Braintree. I'm just shooting straight with you guys. If you have a website or if you have an app, for example, you have a business, and your business, let's say that it's a restaurant or anything that accepts payments, you want to do mobile payments, you want to accept payments on your website, take a look at Braintree or tell your developer to look at Braintree. What it does, it's a one-stop shop when it comes to code. Put this piece of code in, and you accept payments virtually from every possible method you could imagine. PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, all major credit cards, all different countries. It's actually unbelievable. There's a restaurant I go to all the time, and they're developing an app for iOS and Android where they want to be able to kind of do the payments and set up the deliveries via the app. And they were looking at different methods of payment. They were looking at PayPal. They were looking at credit card services. They were trying to figure out how to incorporate this. And, I just nonchalantly told the guy about Braintree. I said, they're an advertiser of mine, so just go based on that. And he told the developer, and the developer was looking into it. I don't know if he's incorporated it, but the fact that it's a very simple piece of code that you put into the website, put into the application, and you start accepting payments. And the best part is they have really good fraud protection. It's a token. So the credit card information does not go to the vendor. It stays there. They process everything. It's actually unbelievable. And here's the great part of this. Your first 50,000 transactions are totally free. So you don't have to worry about paying them and not being happy with it. $50,000, that's a lot of transactions there, and they're giving it away for free. And you could sign up if you go to braintreepayments.com/whatthetech. That's braintreepayments.com/whatthetech. You get your first 50,000 transaction fees totally for free. A couple of companies that use Braintree, if you want to look into them: Uber, Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, Living Social. The list goes on and on and on. braintreepayments.com/whatthetech is the website. I want to thank Braintree for supporting What the Tech. Paul.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about Build a little bit.
Okay.
Someone said frog protection. They do not offer any frog protection, unfortunately. Only fraud. No frogs. I should. We should
Right.
email them. You know what, guys? Send them an email. Tell them. I heard it on the show, and Andrew was talking about it. And he goes, "But where's the frog protection?" Let's talk about build because it's coming up in 9 days. All right, next week.
No, not even. Well, yeah,
What?
actually, yeah, week from tomorrow.
Week from tomorrow. Okay.
Week, yeah.
What are we anticipating here? Because it's an interesting time. It's right before the release of the operating system. What are we going to get from this year's build? Because normally, a lot of times, like last year, made a lot of sense because they kind of laid it out what's going to happen in Windows 10.
Right.
What are we going to get this year? Is it going to be stuff that we're kind of aware on, and they're going to go more into detail, or are we anticipating some big announcement?
I have not. Well, I haven't been briefed on what they're going to announce. So I guess if I was, I wouldn't be able to talk about it anyway.
Sure.
But, I mean, I'm kind of getting mixed signals on what to expect from next week. I've got an article that's mostly ready to roll that actually discusses this topic, but the gist of it is there's a lot riding on this build because for months now, when people have complained about Windows 10 for whatever reason, I would say, guys, just wait until build. I mean, everything is going to be revealed at build. The feeling being that actually before build happened, that we would be have an understanding of where Windows 10 was going to be and all that kind of stuff.
And we're talking as far as development goes. We're talking, the developers that are trying to make these universal apps. That's what I'm guessing this entire build is going to be kind of focused on is universal apps and how they're going to incorporate from platform to platform.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. So, I think on the desktop in particular, and when I say the desktop, I don't mean desktop PCs exactly. I mean laptops, anything that's not a touch first type Windows device, traditional PCs. Windows 10 is this big win, right? And it's a big win for the platform too because it brings what used to be Metro modern apps to the desktop, and it opens them up to a much wider audience. It makes them more applicable on those devices. Makes them work more naturally and so forth. And I think that's a big deal. And I've often talked and written about how great that is. The question mark, though, was on the tablet, phone, kind of touch first side and how Windows 10 will work on those devices. And what we've seen so far has not been very positive. The builds we've gotten for phone have been pretty terrible. Windows 10 for PCs, it works very inefficiently on a tablet.
Why has it been that terrible? Is it's not obviously a lack of development for it. Is it that they just... Is the focus primarily on getting desktop ready first?
So, it's funny, but I mean, if you were to go back in time to last October and then any time in between then and now, I think the consensus would have been, well, obviously they want to get the desktop right first because that's what they really mucked up in Windows 8. And I was kind of on board with that theory. But as we get closer and closer, I mean, it's getting harder to justify that as the reason. And I actually think that what's happening this is a very general thing. This is not a very specific thing, but is something that Microsoft does a lot, which is kind of overreact. When everyone complained about Windows 8, they kind of overreacted and they did the right thing on the desktop. But
Abandoned ship.
Yeah. And they do this a lot. So we'll see. And this is why I think next week is important because there's this feeling that they're either going to just confirm our worst fears, like this thing that we're seeing is in fact it, which is kind of horrific.
Horrific in what sense, though? As far as...
Well,
it's...
many things. Visually, it's unattractive.
Okay.
It's non-distinctive. It looks a lot like Android. It doesn't, include a lot of the things that made Windows Phone wonderful in the past. On tablets, it's inefficient. For all of its problems, Windows 8 actually worked really well on a tablet. If you think about how you're holding a device in two hands, like a full-size tablet.
Sure.
They had really nice edge UIs, especially on the right and left side, that worked very efficiently. Those things don't work anymore in Windows 10. In fact, in some cases, the replacements for them are pretty horrible. So we could be stuck with that. And that means for another rev of the OS, and hopefully not 3 years, but for whatever period of time, we're kind of, another audience is going to be stuck with something that's inefficient in Windows. And that's too bad. But the alternative, by the way, is that they surprise us. The alternative is this stuff has all been placeholders. We actually do have a plan. You haven't seen everything. There's more coming, and here it is. That kind of thing. They could pleasantly surprise us. I'm looking for any evidence of that being the case.
I was going to say,
And,
what is there anything pointing to that
yeah,
direction, or now?
no, other than the sort of logical thought that they can't possibly mean for this to really be it, and
Yeah.
which is kind of flawed thinking.
So there's also the question of how is, as far as the applications go, when it comes to universal apps, how are they going to behave differently on different platforms? Which we really
Yeah, I
have
mean,
we
honestly, sorry, go ahead.
have we gotten any kind of vision on how these applications are going to kind of fit all across the board?
Yeah, I can't speak across the entire range of devices that Windows 10 might run on, right? But I mean, as far as the main ones, PCs, tablets, phones, and the things that kind of sit in between them, it is pretty clear how they work. And because we've seen more and more of these apps appear over time in various builds on either the phone or on the desktop, or leaked builds and so forth. And as they sort of fill in, we've seen the Outlook apps, Mail and Calendar. We've seen Maps rather. We've seen the Photos app. We've seen music and video. We've seen not Cortana, Project Spartan, for example, and you get an idea of what they intend to do with the universal app platform from a user experience standpoint and how it scales, between the devices. And obviously, on smaller devices, these apps will be run full screen. On the very smallest devices, phones and very small tablets, there'll be no option for it not to run full screen. That's just the only way it will appear. Hamburger menus and slide out menus and
Yeah.
navigation on the top and commands on the bottom, or actions as Microsoft calls them, kind of a consistent UI across the board. The apps, that I've seen so far actually are pretty good. They scale pretty well. The issue that I have again on those devices or on those device types with Windows 10 is not the apps themselves. I think they're going to get that right, beyond maybe some user experience stuff. Like, I don't think visually that they're very attractive.
And those are easy things to fix. When you're talking about applications on these, I mean, but more
They
than an
are.
operating
Apps are.
system,
Apps are. Yeah. But things that aren't easy to fix, like let's say Microsoft does something like design a really horrible looking slider control or a text box or a whatever, and these little UI widgets that you see all over the OS. I mean, those things aren't actually that easy to fix. And if you start using them everywhere, as Microsoft is starting to do, not just in these applications and the operating systems, but you're starting to see them on the web, in Microsoft web interfaces. They're creating a new, it's not really a new design language, but it's kind of a new evolution or a rendition of an existing design language that I actually think is kind of unattractive. And with Windows Phone, if you kind of date it all back to Windows Phone, although it goes back before Windows Phone, but Windows Phone being sort of the first real shipping product version of this kind of Metro design ideal, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people found it to be very attractive and interesting.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people were also turned off by it. It was stark.
it was different. I mean, it was yeah. You didn't get the grid of icons that were just sitting there on the phone like you had with iOS or with Android and BlackBerry.
Yeah. I had, I'm at my sister's house, and I've got another sister nearby, and we were at kind of like a birthday thing last night, and my other sister asked me about my phone, which I had taken out, to take photos with, and what is this? You kind of explaining it, kind of walking her through it. She'd never heard, she was sort of vaguely aware that these things existed, but when she looked at the screen, she says, "Oh, this looks like Xbox." And
That's
she's
funny,
like, "I guess."
yeah.
Now that I think about it, like that actually kind of makes sense. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure. But it was interesting that she sort of understood it on that level. But um, I wasn't as worried with Windows Phone. I think with Windows Phone, I thought if people just saw this thing, I think most people would agree that it's kind of a neat thing.
Well, that's what everybody. I don't know anybody that has used Windows Phone and they've said, well, this the UI, it's junk, or the UI. The biggest complaint.
I think most people would say, well, my understanding is the apps aren't here, and I'm not.
That's
interested
exactly
in that.
what it is. Yeah.
And that's, you can't argue with that. I think the thing I'm worried about with Windows 10, and again, we'll see. I'm just worried that the UI will turn people off, especially on phones. Although, I guess the home screen is not, all that different, and so, that will help. But once you get into the apps that use the standard controls, the things that we see today, just like a settings interface or whatever. I find that stuff to be really unattractive in Windows 10 right now. I mean, maybe that changes.
So I'm trying to, for someone like our audience, they're gonna obviously notice a difference in the UI.
Hmm.
Will someone that knows a Windows phone that is not really, you know what I mean? Like, are they going to be turned off because it doesn't look like what it was? I don't know if they'll really notice it.
Right. I mean, just from the start screen, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, some of the things they're doing there are pleasant. I mean, the way that they handle, wallpaper against the start screen I think is nicer in Windows 10 than it was in Windows Phone 8, 1 or whatever.
Is there a side by side of Windows, the current OS, and what it's going to look like? Maybe.
Well, I don't know of an easy one to point you at. I mean, I think the issue is that it's not. If you were to put the start screen next to the start screen, you'd say, okay, that looks okay.
That looks okay. Yeah.
And if you put like the apps list next to the apps list, you'd say, okay, well, that looks okay. The things that I'm talking about are a little harder to kind of pin down because there's kind of user experience retreat. They're stepping away from the panoramas and the pivots, for example,
Okay.
which a lot of people really like. The integrated experiences were a promise that were never fulfilled for the most part. Social networking integration gone. That kind of stuff. I'm talking more about the fonts and styles of controls and just the look of those controls, and they're kind of there was a Metro design language that was at least consistent, and you could create in the very early days of Windows Phone. I mean, literally the first couple of months, you would see examples of apps like Facebook, for example, which was a really neat kind of synthesis of the Facebook brand with the colors that Facebook uses, but with Metro design elements.
Yeah.
And it really worked well. And they went away from that very quickly. And now if you run Facebook on Windows Phone, it looks like the Android version of Facebook or the iPhone version. They're very similar to those apps. And so that's better for Facebook. They get to promote a consistent vision for their brand, but it kind of dilutes the Windows Phone differentiation from a user experience.
So is that better for the user? If you're familiar, if you're coming over from another platform,
Yeah,
is that
it
better for
is.
the user? I mean, and that's one thing that I really liked about Windows Phone is that the applications were kind of integrated to look like you're on a different platform, to look like you're on Windows Phone, where now everything is the same. And iOS kind of had that too. iOS and Android both had different feels for, let's say, a Facebook application, and now they've kind of become universal across the board on everything that you use. But for something like Windows Phone, where their primary focus is their branding and their identity to be so different, I don't know if that gets the message across that you're on something special.
Well, you're right, and it doesn't help to convince anyone to move to the platform, right?
Yeah.
I guess it eases the move if you do make that move, but it raises the question: why would you make that move in the first place? I want to be able to run a version of Facebook that looks just like the one I have on iPhone, but I don't want to have the app selection or the ecosystem support that I get on the iPhone. Like, this is not a statement any normal human being makes. So, obviously, there are concerns there. But I think what Microsoft found with Windows Phone was that despite its differentiation, which people like me might have argued was a positive thing, was also a negative thing because it was different enough from the other platforms that people were weirded out by it or didn't quite get it. And when you add on all the other problems like apps, it just became kind of a non-starter.
I don't think I asked you, how do you like the Skype integration
in Windows 10?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had a chance to use a stable enough version to say. I mean, the goal here should be that you be able to transition between, cellular phone calls and IP-based phone calls with Skype.
SMS and
So as of today, that's something I haven't experienced. I can't. I like the idea of it. We'll see.
So I don't know if you noticed this. I just noticed it literally as we were going on the air. Skype did an update to their I guess desktop application, where now if you send a link to somebody, it'll actually give you a preview of that page, of that post within Skype.
And are you talking about on the Windows desktop?
I'm on the Mac, and I noticed it on the Mac for the first time today. I don't know if this has gone over to Windows because I'm on version 7.7. I didn't enable anything. I haven't updated Skype. It just appeared. So
ESPNs, yeah.
yeah, so if you post a link to any website, like a YouTube video, it'll actually show you a preview. Let me see if I could take a screenshot and send it to you, because that might actually make a lot of sense to you if I sent it to you while we're doing this. So while we're doing this, let me send this to you and see what you think.
Sure.
I don't know. See, I've heard the complaints about the UI are like, I'm seeing the same amount of people saying, I love the new UI, I really like it. And I'm seeing the same amount saying, I don't like it, I like the Windows 8 UI. Windows Phone. So I don't know what the overall consensus is going to be. Is this going to be something that people want to see, or is this something that, people are just going to put up with?
So unfortunately, for anyone who is a Windows Phone user or fan, and this would be true on the desktop side, although there are a few of these people, but they do exist, people that are fans of Windows 8, like they don't like to see the changes that are coming. The unfortunate bit is those people are a minority, and they're trying to reach a wider audience, and they have bigger concerns. Yeah. And, that consistency thing we were talking about earlier, Microsoft obviously weighed the pros and cons of that, and it makes more sense for the platform for people not to be confused when they look at Windows.
Yeah, I mean, here's another example. Great example. When you're in Messages now, you got those. Mm-hmm. You got like the preview image, and you got a circle, right?
Yeah,
it's a circle on Android, and it's a circle on iOS now. They all look the same. It's a circle on Skype. It's a circle on WhatsApp. I mean Viber. It's all the circles, so they all look the same.
Yeah. Now, historically, for the past 5 years on Windows, whatever, and Windows Phone certainly, that would have been a square.
Yeah.
And a square, circle, whatever. We're talking about like fundamental shapes. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. I mean, the difference. The point is that they are all these. It's almost everything is universal now. If the look and feel of applications and the operating system are very similar across all the operating systems at this point. There are going to be elements in all the operating systems that are very similar and very familiar. And to me, that is a fundamental belief within all these companies saying, well, instead of being totally different, we should try to be like the other ones. We should try to be like iOS to an extent where when people come over, it's going to be more welcoming to them. It's not going to be this, oh my God, what am I using?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think they did something really bold with Windows Phone, that they tried not to be different, but to be better, that they really evaluated, how people use phones and how could they make life better for those people. And they tried, ultimately what they made was something that was not successful and didn't resonate with enough people and wasn't maybe differentiated enough to cause people to switch, or maybe it was too differentiated and prevented them from switching. It's kind of hard to say, but whatever the reason, it didn't work. And so it's hard when you really like something like that, like I do. And a lot of people who listen to this or who read my stuff on the web or whatever are fans of this stuff. And it's tough. It's tough when, Media Center goes away, like we talked this week. Yeah. It's hard when you're a fan of that kind of thing, because it's frustrating, because you see the superiority of the design and you have trouble understanding why other people don't see it.
Did you get that image I sent you?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
so I do see something like that in Windows. The Windows version's only like 7.0, but you do see little previews of things before you download them. Yeah.
No, this is not a download though.
It's not a download.
These are
it
links.
Actually plays in the.
Yeah, these are
links.
links.
You sent a link and it played.
Yeah.
Oh, so you should send me. Wait, let me go back to your thing.
Hold on. There we go. I just sent you a link to the GFQ network. Did a link show up or a preview image?
No, just a link.
Okay. So it actually prompts a preview image like it's Facebook and.
Okay, I see preview images on like downloads.
Yeah, on downloads. The other question that now is out there is, okay, so we know if this is the UI, we kind of understand. It's kind of it still goes together. Everything is still kind of blend together. What do they do with Xbox now? Are they going to debut some sort of new UI for Xbox? Because then Xbox looks old if this is the direction that they're headed. That's the one that kind of doesn't fit into this universal idea.
Well, okay, so
it doesn't.
the launcher aspect of the UIs isn't changing all that much. We're still using tiles for those things. They still live tiles with dynamic content. You'll see those in the start menu or start, the full whatever they call it, the start experience, in Windows 10. You'll see that on the home or start screen of Windows Phone or Windows 10 Mobile. And you see that today on Xbox One, and you'll see that in the future on Xbox One. I mean, I think the things that might change are if you go into, a lot of the stuff you actually in Windows 10, some of it happened first on Xbox One. The ability to have a desktop wallpaper. Well, I guess that was on Windows first, but Windows 10 for phones works more like Xbox One, today, for example. If you go into the UI for settings on Xbox One, if you snap something to the side of the screen, there's a lot of text and UI controls in Xbox One. In the future, that will probably look like the Windows 10 user interface controls, whatever they call that, the universal app design language or whatever it is. That's what's going to change. The ability to run apps that third parties create that aren't sold through the store possibly will be added. It's kind of a platform feature. Will probably be added. You should be able to buy music,
Yeah.
which you really can't do. I mean, by centralizing the store stuff, you kind of take the onus off the apps for the content to create the buying experience. And so, you have a music app on Xbox One that plays the music, but you could have a store app where you can buy music or buy movies or whatever, which actually, of course, they have today. But
I'm really curious what they're going to do next week. It's an interesting time period for them.
Yeah, a lot hinges on next week. I mean that, and I'm not trying to drum up excitement. I'm kind of dreading it. Because really it could go either way. I mean, I think obviously they're going to talk about stuff they know people are excited about for whatever reason, like HoloLens and whatever else.
Okay, that's cool. Whatever. They have
fine.
to. Maybe
there'll be a Surface announcement. People seem to think like Surface Pro 4 they're going to announce it build. I know nothing about that. I frankly would be surprised if they did
I would imagine that they would not do a product release hardware release at build. For the last 3 years. Every year when Build comes up, we talk about universal apps on Xbox. That is the announcement we're waiting for. How is that going to work?
I know.
How are they going to do it? Is it going to be a separate app
they
store?
Don't announce it. That we say, well, maybe they'll talk about it at E3.
Yeah. Oh, no. They're going to save it for E3.
Or,
E3 comes. No. They're going to announce it. Yeah.
Sure.
So I think that's one of the only ones. That's the one that I'm kind of looking forward to as a content creator because I want my content on the Xbox. It's another platform to be on, so it's a positive. So the other story that came out, and I don't know if it's a rumor, I don't know what it is, but AMD slipped and said they're looking at a release in July for Windows 10.
Right.
Which that's kind of still on point. I mean, end of July. Then
my initial reaction to that is that's crazy. And they use the word launch, and you got to kind of.
What does it mean?
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into this. Did the person say July because they heard summer, and summer to them means July, and summer really ends in September, and that gives Microsoft 2 months of leeway, and yada yada yada. Whatever. I think the important bit, and this is what I wrote about this week, was not so much the exact timing of it, although I've since heard that July is in fact the current thinking, which I find incredible.
I mean, to them, wouldn't a launch be RTM? Wouldn't they be kind of thinking more along the lines of RTM? Okay, that's July.
I think that these terms have changed, and that AMD might be using a word that doesn't mean the same thing. Microsoft. In other words, we launched Windows 10 in July, but we have a launch event for Windows 10 in September. I don't know.
They are in the heating business, Paul. So it could be a whole different.
So I think the important thing, this is the only thing I wanted to communicate about that because I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's true or whatever. It's simply this. The team that's building Windows 10 today is the team that used to be the Windows Phone team, essentially. They're a lot of what they do, a lot of the way they name things or do things, a lot of their processes are all very much based on a Windows Phone kind of approach, not on a classic Windows team kind of approach. And one thing we know from Windows Phone days is that the time you declare a Windows Phone OS version as done, RTM, and the delta between that time and when it actually goes out on devices to customers is many months. And that Microsoft always RTMs a version of Windows Phone, knowing that there'll be changes to it after RTM and before it sees customers' hands. They know that the hardware makers that they give it to, the wireless carriers that they give it to, are going to find bugs, and that they're going to come back and say, you need to fix this or change this.
Yeah.
or we need you to add something into your OS for better integration for what we're doing, or whatever it is. Like that stuff happens. But in many cases, they know, because they have this leeway with time, they'll ship it with known issues or with missing features, knowing that they will have the time to add that stuff in after it's, supposedly finalized.
Yeah.
So
After
RTM
RTM, you
milestone
think?
used to be something very important.
I mean, after RTM, they will still add features.
I don't mean like, major new features per se, but there could literally be some things that are missing that just get added. They do that knowing they have the time. This feature is taking a little longer to come together. We have to RTM it because the point of RTM is to get in with the phone OS is to get it out to hardware makers so they can make sure it works right with their devices. If there's some missing feature, it doesn't really matter. It's something that can be slipstreamed into it later. I think that's what they're going to do with Windows 10, because remember, the idea going forward is that this thing is never really done, that they keep iterating it and fixing it and changing
I love
it.
it. It's a Google mentality. It's always being worked on.
They really have to do that to compete. I think because if they didn't do that, Windows 10 wouldn't ship until January of next year. You could keep trying to get it right, but at some point you just have to get it out.
You have to get it as close to, making everybody happy. Now, when we talk about that July deadline, I don't think anybody's anticipating Windows Phone 10 to be ready for RTM in July. Is that
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Same
Windows
thing.
Phone 10 is not heading out on phones until November or whatever, right? I mean, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I'm curious on where he heard, how that was interpreted to July. But you're right. It may have been summer, and summer's July, and
I think the most likely scenario is everyone. Microsoft said summer, and he said July because July to him means summer. Mm-hmm. I think that's all it was. I think it was a simple
They're both right.
statement. Listen, we live in the age of pedantics. Everyone takes everything literally.
But what are we looking at? Are we looking?
I would need to say summer. I don't know.
We're looking at a late August release, right?
I'm looking at a late September release.
You're looking at late September.
Okay. We'll see. Again, I hate to keep doing this, but next week is so important because I feel like this is and who knows, they might continue to be vague. They are Microsoft, but this is the chance for them to come clean and to give us a full understanding of what's really happening. Schedule, feature set, look and feel, the whole thing. Windows 10 is going to ship on a variety of different devices, not just PCs, tablets, phones, Internet of Things, that Surface Hub deal, HoloLens, etc. Are all of these things going to ship at the same time? I doubt it. So what does it even mean to complete Windows 10? Completing Windows 10 or launching Windows 10 may simply mean that part of Windows 10 that goes into everything will be done in July. The PC version's done in August. The phone version's done in September. The Internet of Things is done in November. Whatever. I'm just making up dates, but we don't even know. And so we can kind of speculate, which is fun, but I'm hoping for clarity. We don't always get it.
I think a lot of us are hoping for clarity at this point because
That's been my whole life, hoping for clarity.
That should be. You should do a podcast about that, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul Thurrott, hoping for clarity. What do you mean by this? What do you mean? I mean, as far as the desktop goes, we kind of understand it, right? We get the desktop. It is what it is at this point.
I think that's the one that comes together the most quickly, and I think it's the one that's the most done. It's the one where you look at it today and you're like, I can see this. Like this, I may disagree or quibble about little bits here and there, but primarily I understand it.
Yeah.
Phone, it gets a little tougher. Tablet, Internet of Things. I don't think anyone has any idea what that thing is. HoloLens, what? I don't know.
Well, that thing is supposed to come out this year.
Good question.
HoloLens is supposed to come out this year.
Sure.
Isn't that what they said? That is what they said, right? I'm not losing my mind.
Yep. I read things. I swear to God, I read things online. I saw this blurb in some blog. It said, Microsoft confirmed that all Universal apps will work in HoloLens. What does that even mean? What does that mean? I'm gonna be looking at a spreadsheet, a virtual reality, augmented reality version of OneDrive on my couch. Is that seriously?
I want to look at Excel.
That's not what it's not what it means. But I don't. That statement means nothing. It's just. So again, looking for clarity.
I would love to be in an Excel spreadsheet, like Clippy.
Yes.
I want to be Clippy, and I want to just notify things.
I
And
would
change
like to
things.
map this Excel spreadsheet to the contours of this room where the
Yeah.
like couch represents the parts of the chart that are tall.
Yeah.
And the ottoman is those things that are shorter.
Apps on the wall. I mean,
I-
I guess it means like apps on the wall, right? Like you put this thing on, and you could have Excel here, and you could have Skype here, and
Sure.
you are
It
in
might
the desktop.
literally-
You're the
it is-
lawnmower man.
You'll just see it in standard flat for, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I mean. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
See, like with HoloLens, you know where I see it working out really well? You never have to have a television set. You have a blank wall, and you envision that there's a TV here.
Yeah.
That's what I see. Forget about all the stuff that NASA's doing, Paul. Forget about the important stuff that NASA's going to be doing with this thing. Forget about being on Mars. I want to get
Yeah.
Netflix on my TV with this lens without having to go buy a TV. At the end of the day, isn't that what's going to sell it?
I wonder if your head would get tired from that.
I'm sure a lot of things, yeah. A lot of things.
I guess it wouldn't matter because then you could just lay down and stare at the ceiling.
Yeah. Let's take a little break and talk about our Patreon campaign. Guys, we have a Patreon page. Patreon.com/whatthetech. If you want to fund the show, you want to help us out, you want to keep us going the way that we're going, you could fund us. We accept anything and everything. And if you fund us, you get access to our bonus show. We record it live each and every week after What the Tech. It's called What the Talk. And we're going to be doing our Throwback Tuesday. People really enjoy those Throwback Tuesdays, Paul, that you're providing on the show. It becomes an interesting topic to go down memory lane and remember
Throwback
things.
Tuesday is fun because I can complain about the past.
Yeah. Who doesn't like doing that?
No reason to keep my complaints in the present.
Yeah. Next week, we're talking about the Carter administration on Throwback Tuesday.
God, I hated that guy so much. What a jerk.
Patreon.com/whatthetech is the site. Also, if you want to help the GFQ network out, you could use our Amazon link. You go to gfq.co/Amazon, bookmark it, and whenever you make a purchase on Amazon, get a tiny little credit from it. It helps me out. Thanks to everybody doing it and everybody that will be doing it. Little update on my S6, guys. A lot of people have been asking me about this, about the S6. Okay. A lot of people are, I consider myself a living test dummy for Android products. It's always fine for the first couple days. And then I just realized all the issues that exist with it. This camera is still... I'm going to say one of the best cameras I've ever used.
I mean, to me,
on
that
a phone
alone makes it interesting.
Which you've seen the photos that I've been posting. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been taking a lot of photos.
Legitimately beautiful.
It's actually stunningly good. My wife has an iPhone 6, and my camera, I mean, blows hers away. I mean, it's night and day. It's a serious difference. Now, it's not going to be a 1020. The quality of a 1020. I don't think. Who knows? I mean, maybe with all the processing that it's doing, I highly doubt it. You're not going to get that kind of quality.
I mean, it looks like it's right there.
Yeah. I was with
Alex.
Alex.
Need to qualify it for me.
I was with Alex Gumpel because he's in New York this week, and we went out for dinner on Sunday, and
that's good.
he has his icon. He has the Verizon icon, the Lumia icon, and we took the same exact photo. And the photo is, it's a pipe and it's wrapped around with rope. Both of them were solid. They were great. It was just different. His just processes the color a little differently than mine. Mine is a little colder. His is a little warmer. We zoomed in. They're both detailed. I mean, at that point, it could have been, if my hand shifted a little bit or if his shifted a little bit. It's very much... identical in every single way. Just, color representation and color matching is a little different because it's a different sensor, and that's just how it's going to be. But I'm very impressed by it. They did a great job with this. The thing I am not impressed with is the battery life.
Yeah.
You are losing 3% sitting at idle, doing nothing, an hour. 3% an hour is a lot for it not to do anything. For not to do anything. And guess what? It's a problem with the software and hardware. Samsung is aware of it. Cell standby for whatever reason when you have Wi-Fi enabled and not. It doesn't know if you're on cell or it should be searching for if it's searching for a cell tower or Wi-Fi. So it's constantly searching for both. And the battery. I mean, I unplugged this right at the start of the show. So 40 minutes ago, I brought this downstairs. It was at 100%. I'm at 98% now. So I've lost 2% in 40 minutes. You're going to say to yourself, well, that's not that bad. But if you have a 10-hour day and you're out and you're using the phone also, that's really bad.
Yeah.
That's really bad. So they're aware of it. I don't know what they're doing with it. But everything else, it's great. I mean, they built a really good phone. It's just so disappointing that I can't go out without having, one of those external battery packs. Now, when I say 3% an hour, that's on the low end. If I'm traveling or if I'm in an area where my signal's not too great, it's gonna lose even more. Other elements come into play here also. So there is a problem with the battery life. They're aware of it. I have to have a battery pack with it, and I have to walk around with it just so I could keep a charge. That's my problem with this phone. But the camera, guys, if you are looking for an Android phone with a great camera, this is probably the best.
It does look spectacular.
Yeah, this is the best. And I'm not, listen, everything is on automatic. I'm not doing any kind of editing. I'm not a great photographer. I have my one angle when it comes to taking a drink.
But the point is you shouldn't have to be.
You shouldn't have to be. No, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, if it requires you to fiddle with exposure modes and, whatever, then that's not very good.
Yeah. The other thing is, in comparison, because people are saying, well, have you compared it to setting the cellular between Wi-Fi 3G? I've turned off the cellular totally. I've turned off the Wi-Fi totally. It's really a tiny bit of difference. The battery on this thing is not that big. It's like 2,600 milliamp or 2,800. I mean, it's not a significantly big battery. So I think that affects it because it has a really high display, high DPI display on this. It's like crazy. And so I think that sucks up a little bit of the battery life more than, other phones. But I have the OnePlus and I have the LG G2. I thought the LG G2's battery was bad. This is worse. So,
boy.
It's a little disappointing right now. And I know I'm going to get emails saying, well, mine is perfectly fine, Andrew. I don't know what you're talking about. I take mine and you know what? You are lucky. I don't run any applications either on this thing. So you are I don't know what you're doing. You're doing something amazing, and that's unbelievable. But the majority of people that have this phone have a tremendous problem with the battery life, and it's really disappointing to see. Obviously, they're going to update it, and they're going to fix it, and that's going to go away in a month, and I'm going to say, well, the battery life is great. So this is just real-world testing every week that I'm doing with this phone. Just my everyday experience. And since we're talking about phones, Paul, I want to talk to you about Nokia. What's going on with them next year? What's the plan here?
Looking into getting into the smartphone market
Again.
Which I think would be a horrible, horrible mistake.
So, I mean, they're going to go with Android, right?
If they do, I mean, they are coming up with a tablet, right? And the tablet is Android based, and they've got a handful of little neat features, but the phone market is a tough thing to crack. And I think that ship has sailed as far as Nokia is concerned. And I just don't see anything positive happening.
Okay, so the thing about Nokia and the thing that made it interesting to people, even if you didn't buy it, was their beautiful design for their phones.
Yeah.
Those N9s and N8s and N7. They were beautiful phones. They can't do that design anymore.
No, that's all been sold.
That's all Microsoft. So when you take away the design aspect of this,
well, I think there's two things you could look at. One would be the N1 tablet that they announced, right? And kind of take a look at whatever they added to that. That's kind of, there's a couple of cute little lock screeny kind of things that are kind of interesting app launching type things. I think there was like the ability to start writing on the screen with your finger and it would find the app and just launch it, that kind of goofy thing, whatever. These are not the types of features on which smartphone empires are built.
But it's an iPad. It's an iPad essentially. It looks exactly like an iPad.
Sure. So the other thing, since we're speculating again, because speculating is fun, there is a group of former Nokia engineers that started a company called, I think it's called Jolla.
Yeah.
Like Jolla. And, they came up with some kind of interesting ideas as well for like an Android-based system. I bet there was a system. I don't know this for a fact. I haven't looked at it today, but I wouldn't be surprised to discover that their devices weren't Android or Google Play devices, like the Cyanogen or something like that.
The Jolla tablets.
Yeah, no, the Jolla
Yeah.
devices. I don't know that. I'm not really sure, but maybe. I mean, maybe those guys come back into the fold. Maybe they're just waiting for that non-compete to run out that they have with Microsoft, and they could bring those guys back in house.
I mean, they could essentially do anything they want because
But why
Android is the core, and they can make it look whatever they want to do, and they could brand it however they want to brand it. But why enter the market again?
Getting into the tablet market is a fairly low risk type of thing. Smartphones is a very high risk market. You can't just go to well, I guess you could, but I just don't see any success. You can't go it alone and see mass success with a phone. So I don't quite understand why they're bothering.
By the way, the Jolla OS.
When they recently,
the Jolla OS is Migo.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
it's cool looking though. There's some cool ideas.
Yeah, I mean, but you could skin Android to look like this. You can make Android look like this.
Yeah,
and have access to all the apps.
I think regardless of any, I'm inventing any relationship between the companies, but but knowing that they're kind of ex Nokia, you can look at what they're doing and get an idea of the types of designs you might kind of expect from a new Nokia.
So their operating system is called Sailfish.
Yeah,
and it does run Android apps.
It runs Android apps.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Sailfish. Do we need more operating systems in this market?
Nope, we don't. That's the thing. And again, I look at I'm always, this stuff is interesting, but whether it was the Amiga back in the day or BOS back in that day or whatever, I mean, at some point you just have to say we don't really need more of this stuff. It's not really providing any advantage or reason.
There's 10,000 tablets out there, so in order to stand out. Well, you know what is interesting, Paul? It's an Intel chip that the N1 is running.
Oh,
it's a 64-bit Atom.
I've forgotten that.
It's an Atom.
64-bit Atom.
Yeah.
Sure.
That is that's a nice little surprise. What does that mean?
Does it have a fan?
Yeah, is it fan? Yeah, I guess it is fanless. I mean,
no, I'm sure. Of course it's fanless. Yeah.
Power VR graphics, 2 gigs of RAM, memory. I don't know how well they'll do with this thing. Probably not too well. But they have it out there. But now they want to get back into the phone market. So, emerging markets. I don't know how well they'll do in emerging markets now that they do well in emerging markets because the competition really wasn't there. But emerging markets has 5 million Android phones that are cheaper. And it has a abundant amount of applications, and it has branding that people are familiar with. Microsoft is doing well in emerging markets with their Lumias, which already people think is Nokia.
This is like Atari announcing that they're going to make another video game console. They were really popular one time. Everyone knows their name. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
People do.
This doesn't make sense.
Paul, how excited were people about that Nokia Android device that was supposed to come out or came out in one market? Did it ever come out?
You mean the X1?
Yeah.
Or the Nokia X or whatever?
Yeah, the Nokia.
Well, they shipped those. They sold 17 or 18.
Yeah, at first, I mean, it was a big. People were so excited. Oh my God, it's running.
I don't know if they were excited. I think they were more confused.
No, I think people were excited. People, I mean, I would get the emails all the time. People asking, is Paul gonna review this one? Do you know more information about this? It was just Android. It was just Android on a low end device.
Them, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Nokia X goes away with the Microsoft the kin.
Yeah.
Those two.
Yeah, but just about as short lived.
Yeah. Since we're talking about Android and Microsoft, it is interesting how Microsoft has kind of pushed its way into Android, and now it's becoming a core piece in many people's phones. With their suite of applications. They just announced that Cyanogen is now going to bundle in Microsoft's based software on their phone. This is
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, this just shows that they have totally evolved, and they're very different companies. Something we've been saying for years about Microsoft, and that they really look at Android as, okay, well, we have to kind of saturate this market because they are taking over the smartphone market, and the more applications we have on this platform, the better it is for us because it keeps people in our ecosystem.
Yeah. They can add value on Android that they can't add on iOS, right? I mean, I think technically there are probably still more apps on iPhone, Microsoft apps, than there are on Android, although it's getting close if it isn't already equal. But when you look at the difference between what's available on each platform, you see some interesting stuff on the Android side. Lock screen apps, for example, which is something that is still horribly old-fashioned and not very exciting on the Apple world. On the Apple devices, you can have a wallpaper. It's very exciting. But on Windows Phone and Android, you can have these dynamic applications that are running on the lock screen that are really useful. And because Android is basically open, and is certainly extensible regardless, Microsoft's able to do stuff on Android that's more similar to what, in fact, in some ways is better than what they can do on Windows Phone.
I mean, this is not their like, oh shit, okay, we got to have something in the back burner if this totally fails miserably. It's not that when it comes to Windows Phone.
I don't know. I mean, I think in some ways it is sort of a plan B kind of a thing, but I think the more important deal for Microsoft is that it's hard, this is a goofy comparison in a way, but like when I grew up, like butter was bad, eggs were bad.
Yeah.
You didn't eat this stuff because these were bad for you.
Yeah.
And then over time, what you realize is that actually all of that thinking was wrong. But the problem is you learned that at an important part of your life, and so it's kind of ingrained in you. And with Microsoft, we think of Microsoft as the Windows company. And Microsoft isn't the Windows company.
I mean, that's
Windows
just one thing.
It's
just one part.
Yeah, it's just one thing, and it's hard. I do the same thing. I would criticize other people for doing this, but I do the same thing. You knee jerk criticize Microsoft, right? Oh, there they go again. Why would I ever buy a Windows Phone? Oh, they're doing it again. And Microsoft, fundamentally is a software company, and in many ways, what they're doing now is consistent with what they did for much of their lifetime in the early days when they provided software for the most popular platforms of the day, which back in the day, might have been the early PC, it might have been Commodore computers, it might have been Apple computers, whatever.
But this mentality, this concept of Microsoft staying closed within its ecosystem, it's not a realistic expectation because they've never done that. They're on the Mac. I mean, their services, Office is on the Mac.
Yeah. Sure.
So why wouldn't they be on Android?
When Windows becomes dominant in the PC space, and the PC space literally is all there is for personal computing, it makes sense to put all your eggs in the one basket. I mean, it's going gangbusters. It's a virtuous cycle. You can sell people Windows, and then you can sell them Office to run on your version of Windows. You're selling them two things. It's bonus time. The computing world wasn't always like that, and is now not like that. And so Microsoft is, they're not doing it because they're like, nostalgic. I mean, it's just driven by the realities of the market. I mean, some people look at it like Microsoft was forced, to start writing software for other platforms. Yeah, I guess so. Microsoft is following their customers. That's not. I guess you could look at it like some forceful kind of thing.
At the end of the day, there's a very, very good chance that these people that are running Android and iPhones have a Windows-based device at home. Statistically, I mean, it's higher than any other market.
You want people on your platforms, and platforms aren't just operating systems that run apps. iTunes is a platform of its own. It's an ecosystem. What Apple does with their devices, the iPhone is a platform in a sense. It's something that pulls people into your sphere of influence and gets you buying their other stuff. That's its own kind of a platform. If people are running Android apps or running Android devices rather, and iPhones and iPads or whatever, those are customers of Microsoft too, or could be. You'll give them a free version of Office and hope they pay for it to get additional functionality. Seeing how good that works, you hope they use OneDrive and that they'll buy Office 365 to get extra storage there or whatever. Like it, the goal is to attract paying customers and just users of your platforms, which are not just Windows.
Yeah.
You know.
It's interesting. I'm curious about how this, where do you go beyond this? I mean, you're going to bundle Office in there. That's great. You're going to bundle Microsoft apps.
Ideally, if you accept the fact that Android is a semi-dominant mobile operating system, Android is ostensibly free. Because much of Android is simply free. I mean, the path for Android is toward total just free, open, free, whatever. Working with CyanogenMod is an attempt to wrest control of Android away from Google, not because Microsoft wants or could ever achieve control of Android, but because Microsoft benefits when Google doesn't control Android.
Yeah.
And then it's just all free, and there's an equal playing field, and they can all try to make money on top of this thing that is now free and available to everyone.
Yeah. I'm curious.
It's the next best thing.
Yeah. That's it, Paul. Time to wrap it up. If you're watching live, stay tuned. We're going to do What to Talk right after the show. If not, we'll see you all next week. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zan. You can follow Paul at Tharot on Twitter. So next week, what's your schedule like? You're going to be at Build.
Yep.
What day? Thursday.
Actually, I fly on Tuesday.
You fly on Tuesday. So our schedule is whacked out.
It's going to be whacked, for a few weeks in a row, yeah.
So can you do the show on Monday?
Yes, I think I can.
Okay. So we'll do the show on Monday. That's what we'll do next
Following week, I fly to Chicago on Monday, but I think I should be able to do the show during the day on Tuesday.
Okay. If not, we could
there.
always aim for Thursday.
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
No, we can't, because on Thursday I fly to.
Okay.
Las
So
Vegas.
we will do the show on Tuesday or nothing. Yeah. That's how it's going to work next week.
Maybe we'll do it on Monday too.
We could do maybe. Yeah, we could do it Monday. Mondays are open. Whatever. You let me know.
See.
Whatever is convenient for you, Paul. I'm here for you. Go to our website. Go to our website, gfgnetwork.com. Subscribe to us. We're everywhere podcasts are available. It's always great when you guys subscribe. Leave a review on iTunes if that's what you download. And that's it. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye for now.